Once more, California leads the way of incompetence and a lack of compassion. I did a video once before, I will post a link in the description, of progressives in California trying to legalize child prostitution. Now the argument was that no, we're not legalizing it. We are claiming they are victims. Essentially what the bill said is that if a cop saw a girl try to solicit sex and she looked underage, the cop could not arrest her. And the only way he could arrest her is if he could prove that someone was there coercing her and arrest that person for child endangerment. Now just think about that. Just think about that. Here's what would normally happen. If you were a cop and you saw a young girl, she was no doubt under 16, definitely under maybe 14, and you saw her go up to a guy late at night in a car, and you know she was wearing some slutty uniform or slutty clothes, and then you see her get in the car. That cop, if you're that cop, you could go up and arrest her. You could get that young girl off the street. You could question her. You could find out who her parents are. You could ask her who her pimp is. You could find out all this material, and hopefully you could arrest that pimp and get her the help she needs. Well, the bill they wanted to pass was that if a cop saw that, if you saw all that go down, you couldn't do anything because child prostitution is not a crime. Now, once again, progressives are showing their incompetence. They want to basically reduce and purposefully infecting someone with AIDS, with HIV, from a felony to a misdemeanor. Misdemeanor, usually up to a year in jail. A felony is from 5 years to life. Not to mention the fines that encompass both of them. So this guy, Scott Wiener, he is promoting a bill that would change that law. That if you have HIV and you know you have HIV and you have unprotected sex without telling your partner and they get the virus, you could get a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor, which is nothing, which is literally nothing. If it's your first crime, you will probably only get a fine, no jail time. And his argument for this is that we know a lot more about HIV now than we did when these laws were originally passed in the 1980s and 90s. Really. So I have to ask him, is there a cure for HIV and AIDS? Is there a common cure for HIV and AIDS? If the answer is no, then this law is fucking retarded. Because what you're essentially saying is that, hey, don't worry if you have AIDS. You can still go have sex. And if you really want a girl and you're kind of afraid to tell her, well, don't worry about it because you're not going to go to jail for a long time. You might not even go to jail at all. I mean, you will totally ruin that other girl's life. Or that other guy's life. You will ruin their life because they will have a disease that is terminal. Even though it can be maintained, it is terminal disease with no cure. You are putting them in a desperate state for the rest of their lives. That they have to be careful with having kids. That they have to be careful. I mean, how would you feel if you met someone, a guy or a girl, and you were about to have sex, all this stuff, and you have to stop and tell her, wait, I have AIDS. I don't think anyone wants to experience that. And what this law does, this law essentially justifies that. This law justifies that ignorance. And it's sad. It's sad that these California progressives, I don't understand how they don't see that this is not progressive. This is regressive. This is a horrible, horrible trait to have. How can they say that purposefully giving someone a terminal illness should be reduced in crime because it's not that big of a deal anymore? Someone should give Scott Wiener AIDS. Let's see how he feels about that. This is truly pathetic, and every time I hear of California, how they want to succeed after Trump wins, how they have people like Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein running their Congress, Nancy Pelosi needs to be in a psych ward. Dianne Feinstein is seriously a communist who has said, quote, if she could take every gun in America and turn them all in, she would. She is against the Constitution. She is against the individual liberty and rights we are given by being Americans. They care more about illegal immigrants than American citizens. And that's just on the national scale. They have Democrats in the state legislature, that people like Scott Wiener, who think it's okay to give someone AIDS, to give someone HIV. It's truly astounding what kind of lack of compassion these people have for others. There is none. There is no compassion at all for the sanctity of life. It makes me mad because California used to be a place that was looked upon with deference. That you like people from California, you like the actors. This is back in the 80s when Reagan was there and stuff. Now it's like a cesspool filled with crime, regressives, and people who don't give a shit about anyone but their own personal ideology. And this bill, like the other child prostitution bill, proves it. And I'm done.